When I was flying into Jordan as we were hitting the coast, it was so horrifying. Like, it was nighttime. It was a night flight. And I looked out the port side window of the plane and I could see jets. And I knew they were jets because the airspace is closed, and I could see jets, like just the whatever you call it, the afterburners of jets going in and out. And at one point, we were only 30 miles away from the Gaza Strip. It was all black, dark, and then you could see the lights of sort of Tel Aviv up, and they're all partying, and like there's this dark patch with jets flying over it, just bombing these people. And I mean, immediately, the first thing you're struck by when you cross from Jordan into Palestine, they don't even control their own border anywhere. It's essentially like the colonial regime controls the border, and you go through, and immediately the feeling is just so oppressive and so violent and so unnatural. Everything is militarized. The suspicion, we're told, I mean, everything, the cameras, they've got cameras and microphones everywhere, so you can't say anything because they're listening to everything. I already kind of knew what to expect, but it was so shocking to actually see for myself just the level of how such a thing can exist in the 21st century. I mean, even in Jerusalem, you're in Jerusalem, and you've got this absolutely beautiful ancient city with these stones. I would walk in the morning through the Palestinian Quarter. The city itself just sort of exudes this sort of peace in a way, like there's something so ancient, and kind of, I understand why it has this kind of sacred feeling for so many people. And then everywhere, checkpoints, barbed wire, concrete structures, and these tacky flags, these Israeli flags, just everywhere. You wander into the Jewish quarter, and they're literally, like, I have photos of huge banners hanging off walls saying "Make Gaza Jewish again." I mean, it's just like to go out, and soldiers, and not just soldiers, like dudes walking around in Birkenstocks, right, with AR-15s, with American accents, who look like you and me, white dudes with like sunscreen on, you know what I mean? Everywhere, walking through the markets. And these Palestinians are sitting there trying to sell, they're like, oh, look, we live side by side. No, man. They don't live side by side. The Palestinians are sitting there, like, literally selling, they're selling kippahs with like Star of David on them, or sometimes like Donald Trump's face, because that's essentially how they make money, because that's what people are coming to Jerusalem to buy. I mean, it's so bonkers. And then at night I would hear like so I'd wander out on my own, like, and I'd go into these squares, and there's these like crazy, like, people with guns, like, and the vibe was so, oh man, you just feel there's this energy of sort of suspicion and aggression and hate and anger, and you realize, like, wow, these people are not free. Actually, in some crazy way, the Palestinians are more free than the settlers. The settlers are like prisoners of this security. And then the West Bank, it's just horrific. Checkpoints, gates. There are now over 1,000 gates. They keep putting these new gates in. They have this gate system where basically they color code the gates, and you've got like red gates for the military and orange gates. Or the orange gates can be operated by any settler. And if a Palestinian touches the gate, they get shot. I mean, I actually went past the gate, and our guide said, 3 Palestinian boys were shot dead for trying to open that gate. And like, the people there are farmers. They've worked the land. They're so rooted to the land. These are just people who can't access their olive. They steal their water, and they give them only so much to make sure that they can't grow stuff. I did not meet one Palestinian who hadn't either been shot, been in prison, had family members killed. This is something that's like just standard it's standard. Like there's nobody who's not touched by the regime's violence. I was just shocked. I went to Hebron. It's so much worse than it was last year, like the settlers are just, and when I say settlers, we have to distinguish, we have to rather not distinguish, because this propaganda that like somehow the settlers, the hilltop settlers are an extreme element that the Israeli government can't control. People don't know. I'm shocked that people don't know, but people don't know. The settlers are paid by the government to be settlers. They don't have jobs. That is their job. They are paid and funded. They are given RVs and guns. You see Ben Gvir coming out like on the Israeli news. They'll be like, "Oh, look, we just got a new shipment of these RVs for the settlers," and then they give them guns and like train them to and they send them
to like make new outposts, kind of thing.
Exactly. And then they make new outposts. They go and harass a village. We went to Masr Fayyata and met Basel Adra, who won the Oscar for No Other Land. And there he was on his own. I could see as we were talking to him, I could see the settlers and their guns just across the hilltop. It wasn't safe for us. He's like, "Don't go walk up there because they've been attacking. They killed his friend." And meanwhile, supposedly the world is like becoming aware. How is the world is becoming aware? And yet here's a guy who's like just won an Oscar and he's still in exactly the same position. And it's so much worse today.
Did you have a purpose there? Were you doing like international solidarity?
Yeah, it was sort of I suppose more than anything, it was an educational trip, because obviously a lot of the pushback you get from the kind of like Zionist sort of propaganda folks is like, "What do you know about the Middle East? You've never been there." Well, now you can say, "Well, actually, I have." Or they're like, "Come to Israel, you'll see how amazing it is." Well, I did,
Yeah.
and it's an abomination. Like, and I say that, okay, I didn't go to Tel Aviv, but I did go to Jaffa, what they call Jaffa. And I saw, I saw how they've taken Palestine and kind of tried to turn it into Miami, to appeal to Americans, because that's obviously the where they get most of their funding. And no, I'm not impressed, because I guess I'm not going as a tourist. And yet, the amount of hotels and boutique sort of like hotels springing up and Airbnb, it was shocking to me that people actually go there as tourists. And 30 miles from north of Gaza, they're going and enjoying, a Mediterranean holiday with like imported kind of trees. It literally looked like Florida. Like all the vegetation was imported. It wasn't indigenous vegetation. And to know that that's the plan for the whole of Palestine, and that they're more than halfway there, like, that they will succeed. They've been at it for a long, long time. There's demolition everywhere. I would see everywhere we went, there were like demolition orders. They go in and they just flatten homes just because they can. They're just like, "Yeah, we're taking this home. This is now a security zone. We're going to flatten it." And then, settlers move in, they set up their whatever. And you realize like, wow, this has been allowed to happen because the West has a vested interest in it happening. I mean, it's really just as simple as that. But the fact that it's still going on in the 21st century, and that most people in the West are so sort of confused about what it is and have been so effectively propagandized, I got to hand it to them. They've done an amazing, amazing job at managing to keep this thing going for as long as they have. I just hope that, we've come to the end of the road sooner or later, because,
Yeah.
yeah,